Good afternoon, everyone. This is Candace Dotson, and I am the Director of E-Learning for the Indiana Department of Education, and I wanted to welcome you to this afternoon's 21st Century Learning Lab webinar. Welcome to Weather Woes, our reflections on learning virtually. And it's very hard today as I look outside my window at the beautiful sunshine to remember not too long ago that was certainly not the case when I looked outside. I think that most of us could agree that this was definitely an unprecedented weather this winter. And when that all started becoming a reality, I know Superintendent Ritz was very intent on finding options for our schools around the state to, be able to make up those days of instruction that were being missed in the best possible way for everyone. So we put out a number of options from the IDOE, and one of those did fall through my office, the Office of E-Learning, and that was one on using a virtual learning to connect those 4 snow days and also as makeup days. And we had about 46 schools and districts take advantage of that option. Some of those were private schools. But, it was something very new, and while we have had some of our districts participating in a flex pilot, which I'm going to talk just briefly about at the end of the webinar, the idea of using a virtual element for inclement weather was completely new to the state of Indiana. So today we wanted to bring together a few of our districts that did take advantage of that and let them share with everyone else, what worked, how they went about it, maybe some of their challenges, because we have had a lot of questions from people as we think toward next winter. And I've been telling everyone I'm hopeful that we have no snow at all next year. I think that we're certainly ahead. But if that's the case, I know the superintendent is, eager to continue to offer options. And we're going to be meeting, as a matter of fact, as a group at the IDOE in early June to reflect all that's happened. And so I'll be happy to be able to share this webinar. And saying that, I'd like you to remind everyone that this is being taped, and it will be archived for a lot of those people that today probably are taking advantage of the beautiful weather not with us. So I want to get right to it because we have 3 great districts that are willing to share with us today. We're going to start with our friends from Yorktown, and joining us on the call is Holly and Stephanie, and they're going to tell us a little bit about how they utilize the virtual option in Yorktown. Good afternoon, ladies.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Great.
We actually are really excited to be here sharing with everyone today. We did take advantage of the online option that was put out by the state, and in our estimation, we felt that we had a really successful experience. It was a big job, but we felt like it was one that really paid off for our students and for our families here in Yorktown. We chose the online option, chose to investigate that and work to roll that out because we wanted to capture quality instructional minutes before that important high-stakes testing time for ISTEP and iRead times, as well as for AP situations. We wanted to recapture as much time as we could prior. So tacking days on to the end of the year was not really something that we were looking forward to doing. And we did have quite a few days here in Yorktown that we needed to make up. In exploring the online option, it avoided some scheduling issues that we were going to have for throwing in some other days. Our online days were hosted on Saturdays. And we had some questions about why we didn't just have Saturday school. And the situation with Saturday school was it impacted some scheduling things for our non-certified staff. A lot of our bus drivers, those types of folks have second jobs. So they weren't available to run their buses and those kinds of things to get the children here on Saturdays. And if we don't have the children, we can't have school. So we felt like the online option was a benefit for that as well. We also really honestly liked the idea of giving it a try and challenging our teachers and our students and our parents to experiment with something new. So that was another reason that I myself was really interested in trying it out, just to kind of see how it went. And that's kind of how we promoted it to our parents. We were like, we're going to try something new, and we are going to get your feedback on it, as well as our students and teachers as well. And let's just all give it a shot and see how it goes. So that's kind of our background and why we applied for it. If you could advance to the next slide, please. We had a structure for our online days, and you can see, as I'm going to talk through these things, you can see some little screenshots that I took from our Twitter, some things people tweeted. We had some hashtags that went with our days, and I'll share those with you in just a bit, so if you're interested in going back and looking at some of our pictures. But those are just screenshots from some of the actual online learning day experiences and tweets that went out from teachers and parents and even students. Prior to announcing that we were going to do online learning days to our staff, our administrative team did a lot of work on the back end. Our principals and superintendent, myself and Stephanie, we all kind of sat down, and even like our transportation director and those kind of people, we sat down to brainstorm really how we could make this work for everybody. On the back end, we drafted uniform explanations that would be shared with parents through all of our buildings, so that all the information that was going out was consistent, and we felt that was very important. We also needed direction for some of our K-4 students and their families who aren't as comfortable with our learning management system as their student counterparts who are one-to-one and have take-home devices all the time. We had some time requirements that we outlined for them, and you can see that the student time that we required were the elementary students to work for 5 hours to make up their time, and the secondary students to work for 6 hours. The teachers made up their time by prepping their online learning bundles. We kind of allotted them 2 hours of prep time. And I'll tell you, with our elementary folks, prepping those 5 to 6 hours worth of bundles was a lot, because they were responsible for the entire day, a little bit different than if you're a departmentalized secondary teacher for sure. Teachers were also required to provide office hours to their students for 4 hours. They didn't have to be all 4 hours in a row. On Saturday, they could do a few Friday night and a few Saturday during the day to support them. We also, on the back end, prior to rolling out the days, made accommodations for special ed students. We wanted to have a plan for them. We did have special ed staff on campus, and their parents got to decide if they wanted to participate in the online or if we would provide the services here. So that kind of got a little hairy. We had to make sure that we were meeting special ed requirements for sure. On the tech end, we opened computer labs here. They were open from 9 to 3 on the day of the actual online learning day. And they were staffed by just a couple of people, myself, Stephanie, one of our tech guys. You can see in one of the pictures our superintendent made rounds, and she helped out where she could. If students needed lab access because they either they didn't have online connectivity, they didn't have internet at home, or they didn't have a device to use, the labs were available. We also had a 24-hour tech hotline all weekend. So that's something that was available that parents and students and teachers, honestly, could call if they were having tech issues with their personal devices or school devices, and we do our best to talk them through that. So if you can go ahead and advance to the next slide, please.
I wanted to tell you a little bit about our online learning bundles. In each bundle, we had expectations for our teachers. We wanted this to be quality. We wanted to capture instructional time that was missed on the snow days. So we expected the teachers to do some teaching, whether it was videos or creating teacher-created materials with apps. and putting those in the My Big Campus bundles, however they wanted to do it. But we had that expectation for each, so for elementary, for each subject, there would have to be a learning component and then a practice component. There was digital and paper and pencil. Some students turned in their homework on Monday, or the work, not homework, I guess the work that they did on the online learning day, and that was one way we could tell who did the work. If a teacher normally had students just submit work through My Big Campus, and that's what they used all the time, we had teachers go ahead and just have students submit work the way they always did. What we did also, and this was really important in the beginning, we had teachers submit their bundles to the principals a few days prior to posting them on My Big Campus. We also had them send them to us, to Holly and I, and we would help them correct some things and make some changes and do things like that before posting those bundles. The students were expected to complete all the activities. We opened the bundles on Friday because many families have things scheduled on Saturday, and they could start working at 3 o'clock on Friday, and we expected that anything that was to be turned in would be turned in by 7:30 on Monday morning when school began. And that's one way that we could track which students did the work.
And if you could move on to the next slide, please. Okay, so after we did our first online learning weekend, we surveyed all stakeholders, and that was kind of it was a little bit of a risk because you never know. I mean, you're asking, so they're telling what they think about it. We surveyed our parents, our students, and our teachers, and we compiled all of the results, and we really went through, my superintendent and I went through every single comment and really looked for consistent concerns. And we had people who hated it, and they hated it before they ever did it. But there weren't many, honestly. We had people who loved it and loved it before they ever did it. But then we had a group of people who their comments kind of lended us to, we liked it, but it would be even better if. And those were the people we really listened to because they had some legitimate concerns. So the largest majority after our first survey said to proceed. There were some concerns with workload for secondary students, and that was the biggest concern we heard, that there was just too much. And then there was a request for more authentic instruction in elementary. They really wanted to see their students' teachers' faces in the activities, in the instruction. So we had found a lot of videos, and the teachers have made some tutorials for the kids, but they really wanted to see the teachers teaching. So we talked to our teachers about that and kind of did some PD to really help make them more comfortable with that. And we made adjustments for the second and third online learning weekends. And one thing we did was we actually opened our bundles up on Thursday nights. That really helped especially our AP kids who had big, heavy loads. We were also, they still had the same amount, they had to complete the same amount of hours. We just opened them on Thursday after school instead of waiting till Friday. Students were not allowed to work on their bundles during the school day when they were with us. So, and that really wasn't an issue at all. We just surveyed again. We didn't survey after the second online learning weekend because 1 and 2 were back-to-back. But we did survey after the last one, and we just compiled those results a couple of weeks ago. And parents and teachers all felt that it was great. They were all in favor to get the minutes in and to really make the most of that opportunity. The students, they urged us to proceed, but to proceed with caution. And I get that because it's them. They're the ones doing the work. They're the ones that's having to learn that time management. And so, and we appreciated that as well. It all provided valuable feedback for us. If you look down at the bottom, I have a little table that records our attendance for each of our schools. And really it's good. It's great. It's better than, honestly, better than an average day in some of our buildings, so especially with the primary building. So those were our results. If you could advance to the next slide, please.
So these are some of the pros and cons of the online learning days. As Holly mentioned, we talked about in our kind of roundtable with the administrators, the tech team, our transportation director, the director of our food services. We talked about all the different options, and we really felt that this was a way that we could really recapture not just minutes, but some quality instructional time. So that was really important. I wanted to have everyone look at the last bullet for each one. One of the pros was that we required parents to be involved in the learning experience. And especially for our elementary school kids, it really opened a lot of parents' eyes to kind of what goes on at school each day and the work involved, the kind of work that their children are doing. So that was great. But it also was a con because many of our parents, especially of our little ones, had to sit next to their child for all the time that they were working on their bundle. So that was kind of one of the double-edged swords of this.
And the next slide, please. So as we progressed on and on, we tried to, again, really press for that authentic instruction from teachers in there, not just to provide digital resources that they find, which is great, but also to put their own personal touches into their lessons and what they provided for their students. By the last online learning weekend, we had a lot of project-based activities going. If you look at the pictures and the one in the top left, there is a child from a sports medicine class. They had to watch an instructional video. Their teacher actually modeled himself how to correctly wrap a sprained ankle, and then they had to wrap someone in their house the same way and document that and provide that back to him for credit. You can see, if you look at what every single one of these are tweets from parents, except the long one at the bottom. But if you notice that a common theme that they keep, they hashtag it and they mention it, is time management. And that is something that parents, there were some unexpected benefits, and parents really valued that. They valued that their child was given an opportunity to learn how to juggle their responsibilities for their sports and their learning and those kinds of things with their schoolwork. One thing that I thought was precious is one of the students, the parents posted a sticky note that says, "Do not disturb, we are e-learning," and that was on their front door. So it shows that they really protected that time on the weekend, and that was very impressive to us. Finally, the long tweet at the bottom is from actually one of our teachers. She's one of our Spanish teachers. You can tell by her handle, but she also is a kindergarten parent. And one unexpected benefit that we did not expect to see come from this was a high school teacher like Sean complimenting our kindergarten teachers for the bundles that they created and just appreciating the kind of work that they did. So not only did it give parents a new appreciation for the activities and the planning and the things that we do, it also gave other teachers that opportunity as well. So I apologize. It looks like my slides are off a little bit as far as my layout, but I'm going to share our hashtags if you want to go look at some more pictures. Like I said, I put some through the presentation, but if you want to go back and look at some of our hashtags and look at some other pictures shown from or tweets shown from our teachers and parents and students, that would be great as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I absolutely, and I kind of made that comment in the chat. You know, I loved on each of these days, I know Maconaquah, I'm going to say the same thing. I was following your Twitter and Facebook also. Maconaquah has a Facebook, and it was wonderful to see these pictures and hear the comments that people were making. So I encourage anyone who's listening and thinking about this as you go forward to definitely utilize your social media, both for support, because I did remember seeing other people reaching out, to parents, like, what can you do if you can't connect or whatever, and people were offering suggestions. So there was definitely that. I do want to encourage anyone, if you have questions and you put them in the chat, I'll definitely have Holly and Stephanie kind of look in there now and maybe answer some of them there. We'll continue to try to answer those as we go along. I want to go ahead and move on to our next group. We have a lot of good information to share, and I think that some of the questions some of you might have may even be answered by some of our other groups. Our next group that's going to share is both Judy and Craig from Maconaquah. And the interesting part about Maconaquah, I think, is they were one of our very first. We kind of piloted with them the idea of actually using the virtual learning option on an actual snow day. So not just for a makeup purpose, which gives you the option of, opening your school up and so forth. But Maconaquah did it actually on a day when no one could get to the school. But except for the tech people, I'm sure they're going to tell you about that. But so welcome, Judy and Craig, and can't wait to hear what you have to share from Maconaquah. Thanks.
Hi, Candace. Good to hear from you, too.
Hello, Candace. Hey, I just wanted to let you know, I did make it to school on one of those days, but I got stuck in the parking lot and had to have the janitors pull me out. So we couldn't make it, just barely.
If you want to go ahead and move to the first slide, that would be fine. As Candace said, we were part of the Flex group, so I guess we had a little bit of a leg up because we had actually done a virtual learning day in November before any snow hit. So we had from August to November to prepare our community, our staff, our students, our technology to make all of this work. So we had everything in place, so when the actual snow did hit, we were able to utilize all of those things we had in place and make it work. So just some things that we did to get ready. We think communication was probably huge in the preparation. We did a lot of, obviously got the support of our school board. We did a lot of newsletters. We did a lot of Facebook information. We did a lot of tweeting, local newspapers, things like that here's something new in education that we were trying. The students are going to learn from home. And our staff on our scheduled e-learning days were going to be at school on campus. And when the teachers were at school, they spent part of the day in professional development, and then the rest of the day they communicated with their students and answered questions, just various things to help the students get their assignments done. But it was vital to get the community support and the parental support for that. Some things that we kind of learned after our first e-learning day, the local library, the businesses, and the daycare centers wanted to know when our next scheduled e-learning day was so they could prepare for it. The library, because some of our students would go there to use their internet services, local businesses and restaurants said they would offer some special discounts on lunches and things like that for the students if they came there and worked on their assignments at the businesses. And then the daycare center said that they were a little busy on the days that we had e-learning days because they had more students there. So that's kind of hindsight. We learned that we needed to communicate with those people and let them know about our e-learning days. So advertising was critical. And then when we had these things in place, on the morning of the 8 inches of snow, we were able to just call students, call staff, and say, today we're going to have an e-learning day. Get your devices ready, and let's go. Okay, you can move on to the next slide.
One of the big things, we had to prepare teachers for e-learning. Obviously, we've been a one-to-one school for 3 years, so our teachers are pretty tech-savvy, but one thing we did is we have things called Tech Tuesdays or Techie Tuesdays at the lower level where it's not too weird to call it techie. And we would give professional development to our teachers and give them new ideas that they could use to help students learn virtually. We would follow that up because not everybody learns at the same pace even in the professional ranks, so we follow that up with a follow-up Friday. So we had that time built in the morning. During our collaboration time, we have 45 minutes of professional development. We use that very well. We also do technology showcases over the summertime to get our folks used to different devices and technology so that they're able to implement that. So we've done a lot of upfront work. And when it came time for our e-learning days, expectations weren't necessarily, hey, we want you to do this assignment or that assignment. We want the students to have 4 to 6 hours of meaningful work. And I will tell you, on our first e-learning day, it was probably more like 8 to 12 for a lot of our secondary folks. So we probably echo what Zionsville was saying, and teachers probably over-prepared early on, and then we kind of cut that back a little bit. So we expect that. We also expected our teachers to communicate within the departments so they'd have a variety of different things that they could do during the day. It wasn't just online worksheets. It was interactive things. We did things such as a flipped classroom, discussion boards, which were very popular with especially our social studies classes and our language arts classes. You do searches on for social studies. We did a lot of those to find new things as well to get those done. We also made aware that only about 85% of our students have internet connectivity at home. So when we have an e-learning day that is not scheduled with weather, we know that some kids won't have that internet connectivity at home. So what do we do with that 15%? One thing we did is we'd always watch that weather forecast. A lot of times students would download, if they had a video or whatever, would download it the day, like we gave them 10 minutes into the day, download the day before so that they'd have that information. And when they got to school the next morning at 8 a.m., they could submit that information back to the teacher at 8 a.m. So we kind of had that floating deadline for the 10 to 15% of our students that did not have internet at home, which worked out very well. And we did do a study or a survey on that with the teachers, and we found that by 3 o'clock of the e-learning day that we were in snow day, 80% of our kids had all their work submitted at the middle school level, which is pretty phenomenal. When we gave a lot of homework, we don't necessarily get 80% of that back. By the next morning, they had over 95% of their homework done. So that worked out pretty well for us, and trying to collect that data moving forward to make sure we had what we needed. Attendance. Attendance obviously is virtual, and a lot of times how we did this is through a check-in or discussion. So in the middle school especially, if they checked in with one teacher during the day, that was their attendance, and we base it off of that. And again, as I said, those students who didn't have internet access at home, what we found is kids were pretty good, even that 15% who didn't have it at home, of maybe running over to their friend's house in the neighborhood and getting stuff turned in to get that done on time. The assignments, obviously, as we work through the school day, we expect everything to be rigorous and relevant. And so teachers went right along with their curriculum map and used that same material they would have used. It was just presented in a virtual format. Go ahead and flip to the next slide, please. Obviously, we had to prepare our students for this as well. We have high expectations of our students when it comes to virtual learning here at Maconaquah. And one thing we do is we communicated, hey, these are expectations. This is when the deadlines are. If you need help with your information, your parents need to help you a little bit later at night, we'd like you to at least have your homework submitted by 6 o'clock. So we kind of had a floating deadline. The first deadline is stuff you can do on your own. We want it done by 3 o'clock the day of the e-learning assignment. And what that did is it kind of gave us kind of the end point of our day is 3 o'clock here, so that was kind of where it fell in line. If they needed help, get it in by 6 o'clock. The ultimate deadline would have been 8 o'clock the next morning. When they got to school, if they had to email something to their teacher, that's when they had to do it. So that's kind of how it worked. We submitted homework on a couple of different fronts. We have a Dropbox here. We also a lot of times use email just because it's simpler for kids to submit that way, and they get that real-time feedback. So that worked out pretty well with them. We did partner. There were a couple places around the area that kids could go to in walking distance of their house. We have one neighborhood that was a former base. They could go up to a local establishment and email homework there that we kind of work with that establishment. So that helped us out there with those kids who didn't have homework.
Sounds good. Okay, you can go on to the next slide. On the technology side, we needed to do a little bit of preparation too. Even on the snow days, as well as the scheduled days, we had technicians on staff to answer phones, and we would publish the technology hotline number via social media, newspaper, email, whatever, to let everyone know that they had a place to call for questions. And a lot of times it wasn't just a technology question that they might have, but maybe I need to get a hold of the teacher and I don't know how to do that. So we would contact the teacher, get the phone number to the student, etc., that type of thing. Also, we logged all of our student calls as well as the issue that they were having, so we could see if there was a trend and something that we needed to fix before we had our next day. We also published all of the teacher school phone numbers on our website so that it would be easy for parents to get a hold of the teacher, and then we trained our teachers how to check their school voicemail from home so that we didn't pass out cell phone numbers and home phone numbers, things like that. Also, we needed to make sure that we adjusted our web filters so that everything that they could needed access to, they could get to, and we had our students make sure that they practiced beforehand. And again, remember, we had some scheduled days, and so we would say, you know, here's the websites you're going to need to go to. Make sure you try to do this the night before. Let us know if there's any issues so that we can fix that. We monitored our web traffic during the day to see what students were accessing, where they were going. It was kind of interesting to see all the educational sites, and then a gaming site would pop up here, you know, for a few minutes as they, probably as we all do, work a little and then play a little. And then also on some of the days when parents would call in and they were having issues with their devices, we made a couple of house calls. You know, we would run a new device out to a student that was having trouble with theirs, and obviously we made sure that the parents were okay with us doing that. And we surveyed students before, we surveyed students after, parents, the community, and as soon as we started counting our e-learning days, the snow days, boy, the tide turned. The parents really loved it. It was fun to watch our Facebook page during the day, and the parents were all posting pictures of their students working at home. You know, we had some things that we needed to tweak from time to time, but all in all, we had really good feedback from that. Okay, next slide. I guess my advice for virtual learning is just plan, plan, plan. We got all the players around the table several times before we did these e-learning days to make sure that we weren't missing anything. Our special education students, we needed to make sure that they were being provided services, so our teacher of record would contact by phone all of the special education students during each of our e-learning days to make sure that they had no questions and they were able to complete the work that their teachers had assigned to them. We also let students, if they wanted to come to school on any of those e-learning days for lunch, they were able to do that. Now, on the snow days, that wasn't offered, but every other day it was. Also, the buildings were open, whether snow day or not, to use any type of internet activity or internet at our school if they needed to do that. We talked with parents on the phone about what to do if they didn't have any internet connectivity at home, give them some options and some alternative assignments for that. We needed to talk about how we were going to take student attendance, and then also how the students were going to get help if they had technology issues. So it was just a lot of planning, a lot of talking before it happened, but all of that planning made for a very smooth e-learning day for us. Next slide. Email addresses there. We'd be happy to share anything with you that you might have questions about how we did things, but all in all, it was a great experience for it. I think our students learned a lot. I think our community learned a lot, and I think our teachers did a great job in providing an education in a very difficult winter for our students.
And one thing I forgot to mention as well, I saw it pop up in the chat on the side. One thing we did require our teachers to do was be available for the students during the day on our snow days, and it worked out very well. Our teachers sat at home, and in fact, I will give them props. They probably worked longer and harder on these snow days than what they would have on a regular school day, because questions start coming in at 7 o'clock, and a lot of times 9, 10 o'clock at night, they're still chatting live and with email with the kids to try to figure out their issues and get them working on their assignments.
I see one of the questions is, did anybody do a live chat? We had some of our teachers do Google Hangouts with their classes. They did live discussion boards as well. They just did a variety of things to communicate with their students during the course of the day. Any questions? Okay, that concludes Maconaquah's presentation.
It's Candace, and I thought I was talking. I'm so sorry about that. I don't know why I wasn't unmuted. Can everybody hear me now? Okay, so I'm hoping you can hear me. And I want to thank Maconaquah for sharing. They were one of our flex schools, and that did give them an opportunity ahead of time, as they indicated, much like Yorktown was able to prepare for their makeup days. Maconaquah had those flex days that allowed them to have e-learning days ahead of time and do that planning. And I think the thing that we've heard from both groups is it takes a lot of planning, and this was really, to be honest, the hesitation I felt when the superintendent talked about this virtual option. I was very fearful that people would feel like, oh, we have devices, this won't be that hard. But as you can hear from the groups that have spoke already, and I know Zionsville is going to echo this, it takes a lot of pre-planning, a lot of communication with the community, with your students about expectations, with parents to really pull this off. And we certainly have some special populations of students that we really make sure that we address their needs. But, you know, I think it's also proved that we just can't, we don't want to just dismiss this option because not every child has internet, or, you know, maybe it doesn't work for every single student the same way. I think that we are certainly looking at school differently now, and we have to. And these kind of opportunities are giving everyone a chance to learn what works and what doesn't, and really gives us just a new way of learning. So I'm excited about that. So now we're joined by another group who is also a member of our Flex group, and that's Zionsville. So we have Jenny, hopefully, and Chad and Christine with us, and they're going to tell us a little bit about how this all went down in Zionsville.
Hi, and this is Chris Squire, and Jenny is not with us right now. We had a problem over at our middle school right now that she's working on, but Chad and I are here with you today, and I want to echo same thing as both Yorktown and Maconaquah said. It takes a lot of planning to do, and we spent a lot of our time planning. We were fortunate to have two years of E-Days at our middle school behind us before we started this year, so we had a little bit of experience about what that would look like, and we drastically changed our E-Days from the first year to the second year based on parent feedback, teacher feedback, and student feedback. So we had that going into this proposal. On the next slide, our goals were basically to reduce the number of days we had to add at the end of the year. We took the option of doing 3 extra days. We also did 1 makeup day at the end of the year that took us to the Friday. But we wanted to not have to go into June, so we took the 3 days. And we wanted to make sure that we hit these days prior to our standardized testing and our AP testing, so we were giving students the curriculum that they needed at the time they needed it and not in June. And our biggest goal was to offer students strong experiences with digital learning this first time out. We wanted to make sure we did it right. We wanted to make sure that we were not just throwing things online that could be done on paper. So we had to do a lot of planning with that and a lot of work with teachers to make sure that these were good experiences that students were getting, and they were experiences that they couldn't necessarily get in the classroom, that they were extra. And in order to do that, we had to increase our teacher capacity. And that took some work, working with small groups of teachers and then larger groups of teachers. The way that we decided to do this was to first start out with doing at the elementary level, all teachers in kindergarten, all teachers in first grade across the district had the same curriculum for the first day. And then on the second day, we gave them a little bit more autonomy. On the third day, they were on their own. So we had that gradual release of expectations to the teachers so that we can ensure that the first lesson that went out there was a good, strong lesson, and it gave teachers the model for what we were expecting.
Yeah, and this is Chad here. Just to note on that, it's always a challenge to kind of manifest this in the digital realm when you talk about effective teaching, and being realistic with our educators and that nothing replaces the teacher, and then being realistic in what is effective teaching practice and how does that appear in the online format as compared to traditional school. So really looking at how can we recreate active learning in the home, especially for all the spectrum K-12. So for both the non-reader, the special needs student, or the high ability learner, how can we really manifest that in the home so that it is active learning and retainment is high? We started to talk about common experiences, culminating projects, and then, what can be the impetus as we design these lessons to say this is something we want all of our kids to experience so that it doesn't feel like a generic lesson plan. It feels like something that's robust and we're going to build anyway in our traditional school setting, but yet we wanted to do that in an online format. And it did push every single leader, every teacher in our district, which was a great learning experience for all of us in new ways. So not only were our learners learning, we were all learning together as well as our stakeholders.
The next slide. The one thing that's really important to consider, too, is these were makeup days, and these makeup days are a little bit different than we would do if we were doing them on an actual snow day. So because they were makeup days, the content was a little bit different. Our intent, and Maconaquah kind of echoed that earlier, that when it is an actual snow day, it can be a continuation of what you're doing in class and not something separate. Our format was similar to Yorktown's in that we did these as a Saturday E-Day, and we did them spaced out every other week for 3 weeks so that students would have some time to complete those. On the next slide, the process that we went through was to first survey our community. As I mentioned, we had 2 years of work on this with the middle school, but we wanted to make sure that our high school and our elementary were also ready for this. We surveyed the community, 900 families responded, 86 said they supported e-learning options across the board. Only 69% actually wanted to do it right now on the Saturdays, but we felt that that was enough, that we needed to go forward because we had that 86% support of e-learning options. We needed to get started and move forward so that parents could see exactly what that would look like for their children. We got agreement with our Education Association to pursue the state approval with this, and then we did a lot of workshops for teachers on digital design. Our messages went out from the superintendent to all families so that we had that common message. It wasn't just a teacher sending things out or an individual principal, but everything came together from the superintendent so that parents were hearing the same thing at every school across the district and at every level. Next slide. In our details, we did 3 Saturdays, but our lessons were sent out on Monday, the Monday before the Saturday, and then students had from Monday to Monday to complete those lessons. Teachers had office hours throughout the Saturday and during the week so that if students wanted to get started on the lessons, they would be able to reach out to their teacher during the week And then on Saturdays at every building, the computer lab was opened and it was manned. We also had a hotline similar to Yorktown, although we had 0 response on our hotline. We did not have 1 call on any Saturday or during the week. What happened more often was that students reached out directly to their teachers through email and calling them to get their answers versus calling the hotline. So the lessons were released early in the week. If students wanted to start completing them at home at night, they could. They could not use classroom time to do that, or they could spend Saturday. We wanted to give them this flexibility this time because we do have a lot of students who are in sports on the weekend. We had soccer tournaments that last the entire weekend, and we believe that e-learning gives you that flexibility to plan your time and to work on time management. And so that's what we gave them the option to do. The next slide has a little bit more details. As I mentioned, we had the hotline set up, and then the lessons were due on the Saturday after the E-Day, and that's how we verified attendance, was to collect the information from those lessons, their return-in Dropbox assignments, so that we knew students had completed the work.
And just to note here, Google Voice is a great tool if you have not utilized it with respect to a teacher giving out to their personal cell phone. This does give any person who wants a cell phone number, basically a cell phone number, and then you can program it to send you basically a voice to text message to your inbox or send you a message to your personal cell phone. So teachers were able to schedule to get back with students so they weren't getting calls all at the same time. And also the parents, I think, and stakeholders felt very comfortable in that they were getting either the hotline number or a teacher's phone number. They were able to receive both to find support and help.
And the next slide.
Our elementary team, some helpful tips that we did share with. Really, obviously we shared build those common E-Day lessons for each grade level. So the parents had the common experience in their homes with their students, and it looked uniform as we did roll this out. And to choose a team of strong teachers for each grade level to build the lessons with tech support, provide chocolate and encouragement breaks, as we really did challenge each other because it's not easy to create an online lesson as we have all echoed here today. And then to share that out through the team by a leader in joint communication, then kind of have a systems approach and hopefully try to grow knowledge but also comfort level with all the staff. A couple of things here, if we go to the next slide, that I think is real important to note, is to share the plans for the day so that each grade level teachers can see them and get the ideas, but do the beta testing beforehand prior to release, because to build a robust lesson, educators are want to go out to the web, obviously, and find different sites, different resources, and some of those may have an advertised flyer that's not appropriate. Some of those may not work on an iPad. So we wanted to make sure as we rolled it out that we were successful with implementation, and all those things could be tested early. And then we would get in habit as educators when we create that to have these filters in mind as we do create online lessons in the future. So we're really trying to build our house, so to speak, with a strong foundation there with beta testing. And then as we did give just a gradual release of autonomy, try to release that to a grade level leader at each grade level so they could do the testing then for that day 3. And it really did work quite well that way. Okay, our next slide, and standards for quality.
We put together a rubric to help teachers understand information that they should include and what makes a good E-Day lesson. So we've created a rubric that includes the ISTE standards, but it also has essential elements for designing digital learning. And this was new to teachers for us. They had been sharing their own E-Day lessons individually. They'd done some things online. But then giving them actually suggested tools to learn and examples of what they might look like really helped them. And we built this as we were going, and this is still a document that is can constantly change and be improved so that all teachers can access it and get some really good ideas of what kinds of things make up a good E-Day lesson. The next slide also talks a little bit about our quality standards. We wanted to make sure that all of these were standards-based. So our E-Day lessons do have the state standards embedded in them so that parents could see that we were still meeting state standards while we were doing these. There has to be clear directions. We told all teachers that they couldn't put a new idea up on their Padlet. We used Padlets for the elementary because they were very elementary organized. And then we used our LMS for middle school and high school. And they needed to have clear directions and be engaging and something that the students were familiar with so that they could find success with this. The process, as Chad mentioned, we wanted to make sure they had authentic tasks, not just busy work. We found ourselves getting sucked into some busy work sometimes, trying to meet those hour requirements. So we had to go back and look, what would be an authentic task that we would want students to do, and especially if these were our children, what would we want them to be doing?
Assessment and feedback as well. We ask all of our educators to give quality feedback, and even got into a good discussion on what is quality feedback, what does it look like. This is an experiential process, so not only are we looking at rigorous content, but also the experience in itself in an online format. So giving feedback as a coaching model, both on how do you interact as a learner in online format, and what kind of things do you need, and then what kind of questions do you have with your learning, or what gaps might appear. And a celebration there, one of our special needs families, parents shared back that they finally, for the first time, understood some of the prompting techniques they needed to use in the home and some of those coaching techniques. And my hat goes off to our educators. Some of our special ed educators even offered to go into the home, had office hours after school on their own above and beyond some of the office hours that were noted. And I think that just goes to the heart of a lot of the teachers that we have and are fortunate to have not only here, but obviously in Maconaquah and Yorktown as well, to be those pioneers and to go above and beyond to say, hey, what can we do to really make this successful and experience for all? So that feedback, obviously, in reflection was critical to the learning process. Next slide.
The next slide shows one of our sample Padlet pages. Our parents that were most worried about doing E-Day learning were elementary and specifically kindergartner and first grade parents. They wanted to know what that would look like, how their children would be able to complete these tasks online. So each time we sent out a specific Padlet page, there was a first grade one is posted here, and there was a checklist. Parents gave us feedback that they really liked having a checklist so they knew what the students had to complete. So each one had a checklist, and then they also had each mini lesson listed below that. So our Padlets were all on our district website so that parents could access those from anywhere. We did have people from outside our district access them while they were up so that everyone knew what was going on. There was nothing hidden. Everyone knew what was expected at each grade level.
And again, I want to echo just celebrating the work of educators, because we're really doing our work in transparent form for the first time when it's online. So putting it out there and saying this is good work that we believe in, and then trying to continue with that is always a challenge, but I do give a lot of credit to the teachers for that. Our next slide.
We had a checklist of things that we wanted to make sure were done before we press send and send this off to parents. Because we don't provide devices for our students, we wanted to make sure that whatever we put out there would work on any device that parents might have at home. So we had to make sure it worked on a Mac, a PC, a cell phone, an old computer, a new computer, and we tried every single Padlet on several devices, both at our personal homes as administrators and here in the building. And that was very important because we found a lot of things wouldn't work on some devices, or that we needed to change the way that they showed up so that it was usable for students at the youngest level. We also made sure that everything was cited. We wanted to give credit for other work if we were taking information from YouTube or from another source. And we really, really learned a lot about how to crop YouTube videos so that you didn't come up with advertisements or links at the end. We learned about show me videos. This process that only took us a month to put together, we learned more tech tools in 1 month than I think we have in 3 years.
I would agree, Chris. It's along the journey learning, which sometimes is the most important and vital, and ones you remember. Case in point, Camtasia software was real important for us as teachers made videos, and then we're able to have the pop-up screen beside the online learning lesson so you could see the teacher appear and be talking about the lesson. And I did see in our chat corner earlier, Candace had noted about kind of real-time feedback, and I have imagined and envisioned someday being able to get to like the Kindle Fire commercial where the teacher can pop up on your screen and see your screen as a learner and give you feedback. Obviously, that would have to be scheduled with the teacher, but yet that's real-time feedback, and we find that to be the most effective for our learners, and the tools are there for us to do that, but we're just catching up with the tools, as we know, in the technology every day. Also, items to check before we press in is just our partnership. Asking our teachers, what students do you think could have early struggles with anything that you're seeing, then reaching out ahead of time to those families, to those kids, making our accessible, making our needs accessible to them, and even a partnership with our community library, seeing what kind of hours they can offer. So if there's any connectivity problems at home, whether it be capacity or lack of just connectivity in itself, it's whatever way we can have to support those folks and those learners as well. So we all know technology is great, but it'll go down as well. So having that library as a backup was a great asset as well. Okay, our next slide. E-Day arrives. Finally here, we, obviously echo that with a friendly letter as we send it out with links to the lesson from the teacher at the elementary level and office hours included. And a message from the middle school or high school offices with links to Google Docs showing all staff office hours in one place. And then those simple previews or reminders to students in class and ensuring all our supports in place for a successful rollout and implementation. So as we roll on to the next slide and giving all students that successful E-Day experience, you can just simply see here, as I won't read it all to you, but basically the academic and functional here as we look at maybe some specific needs or changes or accommodations that we'd have to know and how that may look and manifest itself.
So we had concerns with our special education students to make sure that they were also meeting their academic goals. And so this is, for some of our students, this is one example of some of the things we did where they would get to select both academic and functional things to work on with their families and then complete these at home. So these were posted. There were videos that were included with it so that the students could see how to process this information and then try them at home. The next slide talks a little bit more about completing academic and functional assessments. And these are for students that have functional plans. For our students that might have a learning disability and still be working in the classroom, we had all of our special education teachers look at the assignments we were sending out and make accommodations just like they would do in class. If we needed to change one of the assignments on the Padlet or on the LMS, the special education teachers would work with the classroom teacher and do those ahead of time so that the correct assignment was sent out to the students. And they ask parents for feedback frequently, and our special education teachers sent out communication to parents throughout the week, just asking, have you started? Do you have any questions? Do you have any concerns? And they were also available on Saturdays if students needed to come in. Our celebrations are the next slide. We had almost 100% attendance. In some grade levels, we did have 100% attendance on our E-Days. We had very few parent concerns. Our biggest concerns were from parents who had multiple children. So what we noticed is if you have 4 or more children in your household and 1 computer, you were finding it more difficult to complete these on one day. And so that's a concern that we have thought about for a snow day, a real snow day, if you were working with that kind of situation with your family. Next year, our middle school and high school are one-to-one, so all of those students should have a device. So it'll just be our elementary who will be needing to work on devices. 2 years ago when we went to E-Days for middle school, we surveyed our parents to see how many actually had a device and how many had internet access in our house. And almost 98% of our families do have internet access in their house. So that was less concern for us, as I know it is for some school districts. We did have to loan out some laptops to students who didn't have them but had the internet connection. So we tried to give parents a lot of different options to make sure that that wasn't an issue. And then as Chad said, we partnered with the library and posted library hours as well as Saturday hours where they could come and use our labs. The big thing, too, was positive teacher feedback. Our teachers were very excited about this form of learning. It was new to them, and they've actually increased and started doing some of their homework and some of their assignments in class now in a digital format. So it has pushed them to do more with technology than any other initiative we've ever had.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, even substitute teacher plans. I've talked to some of our teachers that are using now some of the online tools to make sure what they want to be taught is taught the way they want to teach it, and basically bringing in those tools in a virtual format so that students experience that for part of the day. So if we can even increase the rigor for those days and when our teachers are away, another implicit reward, no doubt. Okay?
And that's our presentation. I noticed that on the chat, a few of you had asked about sharing our rubric. We are more than happy to share that with anyone. We can even send it to Candace to post on the DOE site if that would be something you'd be interested in.
That'd be great, Chris. And thank you and Chad so much for sharing what's gone on in Zionsville. You know, from all three of the districts that shared today, and I know from so many more that are doing this work out there, you know, it makes me so happy to see this, you know, this actual tide turning, I think, to, you know, I do think it's been a lever for so many of our instructors who kind of were hesitant about, you know, what does it really look to teach, what does it really look like to teach blended? But I think that this snow day, this idea of not having to make those days up in June, of offering the learning when it was really needed by students was a great catalyst, I think, for getting people now to say, wow, this works and we can do it, you know, better. And so it's been really exciting for us. And all of you have demonstrated that it was a very thoughtful process, and I'm so excited to share the archived copy of this. Definitely going to send it off to the superintendent herself and ask her to please listen in because I know she'll be thrilled with what she hears. So I thank all of you. I think we've been answering most of the questions as we've gone along, but if any of you later think of things, I know if you do send them directly to our office, we can certainly connect you with any of these people. So I know we've been just a few minutes. Gosh, we did a great job of staying within the hour. I did want to just mention from the Office of E-Learning, I hope everyone is well aware the summer of e-learning is about to start. So we go from thinking about winter, makeup into the summer of e-learning. And we have 19 conferences happening this summer all across the state of Indiana, beginning the first week of June through the first week of August. So I hope that each one of you are taking advantage of that learning and that collaboration that will take place. So if you don't know where those conferences are, be sure to visit our website that you see on the screen right now and click on that logo there, and you'll be taken to a great list of those. If you'll go to our next slide, Mary. The other thing I wanted to remind everybody about is we have a Twitter chat that happens every Thursday, and this week, kind of exciting, going along with social media in the classroom, and we have a guest moderator out of the EDFC, John Wells. Some of you may follow him there. You can see it on the screen. So I hope that you'll tune in every Thursday. It's 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 7 o'clock Central Time, or be sure that you follow the INE Learn because we share things throughout all of the days, but I know Thursdays is a great time to join our chat. And there's more about the chat, as Michelle put in the chat window there on our Blogspot link. And so I guess we just wanted to say thank you to everybody. You know, connect with us in the future, follow our profile, visit our website, email us if you have questions or want to see some other topics that will be coming up. We certainly are always looking for topics for our 21st Century Learning Lab and things that are going on. So you'll see our contact information on the screen. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. Thanks, Mary, for producing today, and thanks to all of our presenters. Have a great rest of the week.